to say hello to everyone, especially Carol. You and I are probably the least acquainted. Everybody else here on the Zoom are my family. Russ and Ann are my brother and sister.
Okay.
And you know my mom, Rita. And Linda is one of my Facebook friends, and she's been following along on my posts. And I suggested that she get her mom and Vera on, because there's a little piece I want to read tonight. Mom and Vera and Lila have been friends for a long time, and they popped up in my book. Many people have popped up in my book, some by name and some not. So we'll talk a little bit about some of that. But we were going to do this for like a half hour, and then a Q&A, a question and answer. But if anyone wants to ask something along the way, feel free. Go ahead and interrupt me. I'm very comfortable with that. So, so Carol, and I'm trying to, I can scroll through who else, if anybody else joined. I know Debbie knows me well. We used to work together in Dyersville Hospital, had some good times. And Russ is my brother, and there's Laura, Lila, Vera, all friends of the family. So for Carol, you may know me from way back when, but I grew up in Dyersville, obviously, and I worked at the Cardinal Lounge and the Dyersville Hospital, graduated from Beckman, went on to the University of Northern Iowa. And so that kind of is where my educational background came from. Then I moved to Illinois with a teaching position and did that for a few years and stayed in my field of special ed for my full career, ended up retiring in education, but I hadn't been in the classroom for more than 5 years, and that was at the very beginning. Along our way, I got married and I have 3 children. My oldest is almost 30, he's 29, and he's a social worker, lives in Chicago. Then I have Matt, who's 27, and he lives here at home with us. And then my daughter, Carrie, is 24, and she's got engaged right after the new year. So that's my family. And
congratulations.
so, yeah, thanks. So that's my background, my history. I've lived in Illinois so much longer now than Iowa, but I must tell you, there's always something about Dyersville that would be home. I thought once mom and dad were gone or had left Dyersville, it wouldn't be the same, but it truly is. And so I want to thank Debbie Goodkoff especially for encouraging me to continue working with different avenues out in Dyersville to kind of help not sell the book, promote it, because I didn't set out to write a book, not this book anyway. During the pandemic, I'm a really junkie on Facebook. And so when the state of Illinois shut down in March, early March, I just tapped out a quick short Facebook post about how, oh my gosh, you know, things are going to start to change. And I started making a few little notes each day. And pretty soon I was finding very common, everyday, ordinary things that were more or less affecting us, but not in a big way. And I don't think we could ever imagine the depth of what the pandemic was going to do, both in illness and disease, and even worse, death, but how some everyday modern things were going on around us. So I started writing top 10 lists because my work as a Shipt shopper, which is a grocery delivery service, I was encountering lots of people, people that were trying to be safe and stay home. And I was finding crazy things happening in the store and so on. And so I started making top 10 lists, followed up with a hashtag. And I'm not sure why that took off, except it was fun for me to recapture my day and put this down. It really wasn't a journal. And so as I was approaching 50 days and 60 days and 70, I'm like, we're done. We have, you know, pretty much immersed in this new culture and this new lifestyle, but I had encouragement from people to continue. So I did. And that took me in a couple different directions, but finally at about day 80, 90, and I said, I'm done at 100. So that was that. I finished my top 10 list, my hash browns. We had a lot of interaction with family, with friends, enjoyed each other's situations. But at 100 days, I'm like, I think we have a new norm. I don't think there's anything clever, friendly, or fun to write that's different for people. So I just stopped, and that was fine. I started March 12th and I ended June 30th. In August, I said, oh man, I should print that. Mom's always been good about printing stuff and putting it in a book. So I thought, I'm going to be like mom. I'm going to print my 100 days and put it in a notebook and put it on a shelf. And I said, that is really stupid. I can always retrieve it from my computer. And if it's left here in my shelves when I'm gone, my kids find it. They'll say, oh boy, look what mom did. But regardless, what triggered that 3-ring notebook idea was the fact that I've always had another book on my mind or in my heart that I haven't brought to fruition yet. And it's becoming more difficult to do because time keeps passing and my story continues to get longer. And there's variables about it that change my direction. But I said, I need to do this book because it's already written. The content is available to lift off the computer and put it on a piece of paper. And so I called a friend. I would call her a friend. She's more of a professional acquaintance who I've been in different meetings with or different groups or whatever. And she's an editor and she's a bestseller. And I said, Kelly, I'm ready to write a book. Actually, I said I want to write 2 books. And so we chatted briefly. I was in my car by a park here in Rockford because I needed privacy. I didn't want Matt, my middle child, to hear any of this because the second book is going to be about him. And I think he knows that. But I wanted to talk to Kelly privately about this. And she said, let's do this book first. She says, this will just take a little bit of cleanup, a little bit of making the book timely and timeless. So that was in August. And then by November 15th, I had a book on Amazon. And so the course of writing this book evolved really quickly because it was not an intentional plan. I didn't have to sit down and think about what I was going to write except to do my daily top 10 list. So the book came about in a way that was kind of like my trigger or my jump start for what's next. I didn't feel I could go ahead and start my next book until I had this one done because this one was, like I said, already written. As I was writing the book, it was occurring to me that this was really relatable stuff and people were experiencing some of the very same things I was. I started developing some themes around my day. As I said, I was in the grocery store and we didn't implement mask wearing right away in March, but I think we were a lot sooner where masks were mandatory than you were out in Iowa. And so a lot of my book talks about masks, people wearing the various kinds. And as we all know now, you can buy them. I was in Joann Fabric yesterday. You can buy 2 for $1 and get 3 free. I mean, all of a sudden we've exploded with commercial masks. You can get a mask anywhere because you have to have them. But in the early days, people were wearing the craziest things. And I would remark on those because other people weren't really out in the stores. So my book started becoming very relatable and everyday things that were affecting us. And then because I'm long-winded, I needed to shorten up my posts because I didn't want to lose any readers. I started writing a hashtag. And one of my, I'll call him a colleague, but we're both shoppers. That's hard to call a coworker a colleague. But anyway, one day I wrote, oh my goodness, I had to call Social Security and I got through like on the second ring with a live person, which if you ever had to call a bureaucracy or an agency or a federal business, you are stuck in a prompt or a cycle. You have to hit number 3 and number 2 and number 1. And pretty soon when I got somebody, I was like, oh man, I said, what a quickie. So my coworker, that was my hashtag quickie, he thought, oh my God, I can't believe she wrote something like that because that wouldn't have been my normal character. So, you know, he got to see a side of me that necessarily wasn't what he typically saw me as. And so as the hashtags evolved, my purpose for looking at what I was doing changed a little bit too, because I wanted to summarize it. Again, I never intended to write a hashtag on everything because Facebook was not highlighting or bold facing them anyway. And so they were not really being recognized at that. So when I stopped, people would say, where are the hashtags? So hashtags continued and it helped me keep my writing short and concise. And I think for Facebook, that's very important. So that was how the book evolved with the hashtags and the top 10 lists, what I was doing every day. The title, if you haven't seen the book, oops, this is my botched book. We have home on it because I put the wrong person's name in it or I spelled it funny. So let me just remove that a minute. So now it's become my workbook. But 100 Days of Staying the Hell Home in 2020, hashtags of COVID-19. I asked my brothers and sisters and my own children and my husband, what can I call this book? Because we had various themes around it. And Carrie, my daughter, was actually the one who came up with the title that I liked the best. And the Staying the Hell Home, I knew could kind of maybe go one way or the other for some people. It might be a little sensitive. And I talked to the gal who formatted the book, which is the person who they used to call the typesetter. She says, we still call ourselves that, but obviously they're not a typewriter. I asked her about it. I've never met her. She's out in Utah. We did everything online. Everything was virtual. I asked her what she thought of it. And she said, well, she thought it was probably not as classy as maybe saying staying the heck home. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. But when you say staying the heck home, everybody's going to know you didn't use the word hell. So I felt it was obvious, but I wasn't really comfortable yet. So I did a couple of things to decide if this was acceptable or not. And I contacted two friends of mine. One is a retired PhD that works at our Catholic diocese here in town. Used to be at church with him, and now we're on a committee at the hospital together. And I contacted, he's been married, he's widowed now, has no children. I contacted a friend of mine who I met through our pediatric oncology online support group. And Beth has a family of like 6 or 7 kids, tons of messy lives, tons of problems with kids, totally focused on the Holy Spirit, keeps life balanced, knows that she's being led where she needs to be while she handles the mess. So I sent her a couple pages. Now, Beth's on the East Coast. Not that that matters, but there's probably a little bit more progressive thinking. So I said, she's probably going to, if she shuts me down, I'm going to use the word heck. I knew Mike was going to shut me down, but that was okay. I needed to feel this out. So I sent a couple pages to Beth, and she read it. She said, oh, Sheri, my 88-year-old in-laws would just die. This is a stitch. She said, you've got to keep it. So that kind of sealed it for me. And then just today, this is interesting because I was reading an article in our local paper about the advertisers for the Super Bowl. And Coke is not advertising at all. Pepsi is not doing Pepsi. They're doing Mountain Dew and whatever else. And there's some advertisers who just pulled out or not advertising to that level. And I do want to read this to you because it really helped me appreciate the fact that I stayed with the title that I did. The article is from a professor at some university, and he said that there's a risk associated with messages that are potentially too light. And that was my concern about the pandemic. If I said 100 days of staying the hell home in 2020, acted kind of flip and sarcastic and like I didn't think there was really anything happening, we can make light of it, but I wanted to be sensitive to that. The rest of this quote goes, and at the same time, there's risk associated with doing anything too somber. And I thought, I'm okay with that. And this helped me today to appreciate the fact that I did stay with the title. I don't think it's real controversial. It might offend some people. But my third test, Mike was 1, Beth was 2. My third test was, it was my turn to sign up to bring dinner to the priest in December 15th. So the book had been out a month. And I was on dinner night for one night, and I brought dinner over and I wrote my menu on a slip of paper, and I added a little note that I said, I'm including the book I wrote, where you'll find some fun things about Lent and various church at home kinds of experiences. So I had no idea how this was going to go. We have 3 priests and they range in ages and whatnot. So anyway, on Sunday back at church, the younger priest says to me, oh my God, that was so much fun. So much fun. So I sort of felt better again. So I'm kind of belaboring here the title, but I wanted you to know that I did struggle with that a little bit. I wanted to be sure it was acceptable. And the quote today in the paper about you don't want to be too light, you don't want to be too heavy, kind of helped me appreciate the fact that I'm okay with that. And I will have, ticked off some people. So that's that. That's the title. The cover, if you've noticed, there's little slips of calendar sheets flying out of the chimney. That was intentional. I told my cover designer, here's what I want. I want a funky house. I want this. I want these little papers flying out of the chimney. So she designed for me a couple options, and we ended up with this. So my daughter designed or created the title. A friend of mine through a Facebook friend, who I deliver groceries to, by the way, was my designer. And then, of course, my editor was not local. Well, she used to be, but she just recently moved. And my formatter, I met her through acquaintances. So that was how this book structure kind of happened. I'm looking at my notes up here, so I don't forget what he's going to tell you. The book is written in a fashion that hopefully is pick up, easy to read. You don't have to read one day to the next day because it's really not a suspenseful book where you're going to, wonder what happened yesterday, what's going to happen tomorrow. But it's the style is such that it's a page per day, and really it's not, because there's some days go 2 or 3 pages. I found that when a friend of mine's daughter died, it was important to me. Again, I didn't know I was going to write a book. It was important to me to honor that and acknowledge that and say that, you know what, I see you in this. I can't imagine what having a death in your family is like, much less your 11-year-old daughter who died unexpectedly. And she was the second death during the pandemic that I'll say witnessed. I didn't witness Ellen's death, and I didn't witness the first death firsthand. But as I was coming down one of our main roads in Rockford the one day, there was a funeral procession of 6 cars, and that 6 cars included the hearse. And I was so touched in a way that I had to really stop and give pause for a minute to say to myself, look what's happening to us. We have people who are grieving and burying someone they love, and we can't even have a funeral together. this is where we're at in our pandemic. And that was early in my 100 days. Ellen died early in my 100 days. And it affected me in a way that I really wanted to go out there and put down what was happening in our life in that way. So I have a couple entries on death. I've got several entries on McDonald's. McDonald's is my go-to drink. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't need any Starbucks. So when Starbucks closed and McDonald's was still open, I was hoping maybe Starbucks people would jump on board. But early then during the pandemic, McDonald's started on their cups having a little imprint of these little, what do I call them? Little jingles or little inspirational. They're not inspirational, they're jingles is what they are. And so I started noticing those, and pretty soon I was finding things happening that related to that. I was like, I think they were made for me. The one thing that is on my cover, you've probably read, there was a hopscotch on a driveway, and I hopscotched down that thing. And people who know me know I don't exercise in any intentional way. And so my entry was, oh, I exercised today. I went down a hopscotch. And my hashtag was, need a sports bra. Clearly, I need a little more support if I'm going to do any kind of exercising. So those are the kinds of things that came about as my daily experiences. The McDonald's is my go-to. And I also found that to me here in Rockford, we're a town of about 160,000, given our near metropolitan area. And I had found from where I could go what was open, that and McDonald's wasn't open, but the drive-through, I found that they were kind of our trendsetters in how we were going through the pandemic and how we were having interaction, or how we were having people to enter your stores or whatnot. They were first to put up plexiglass on the drive-through window so the server could just, or the cashier could just put her hand through. I went to our post office, and way before plexiglass, they had a plastic clear shower curtain that would separate you from the teller, the cashier, and you buying your stamps. And it was just the craziest things ever being jimmy rigged up. So those are the kinds of things I was noticing and writing about. The grocery store, I was in the grocery store about 6 hours a day, 5 to 6 hours a day before the pandemic. People order online. I shop the groceries. I purchase them with the company's credit card. I deliver them, repeat, that kind of thing. So that was an experience in itself, because that's when they first, and you might not even remember this. Maybe your stores did this, maybe they didn't. Our stores would put like painter's tape on the floor to direct the arrows, so you went down the aisles the right way. That was not successful at all. People forgot, they didn't see it, and whatnot. So the grocery store became good material. Dyersville has always been material for me, and my McDonald's experiences were oftentimes similar to my Dyersville experiences, so I would write about that. I'm going to read a couple passages in a minute, but the one thing that I really loved about, not the pandemic, what I loved about Facebook during the pandemic was that we could still connect. It was a way that was familiar to us. That wasn't taken away from us. And it was on Mother's Day when I was talking to Mom, and she mentioned that was, I think, when Lila and Vera first started playing euchre, around that time, or maybe just within a couple of weeks. And I guess I didn't realize that or know that. So when Mom said that they were playing euchre for 2.5 hours on a Saturday, and I think you guys played 2 times a week too, actually. I mean, that was like, dang, that's very cool, because Mom obviously doesn't live there anymore, but those were her best friends. And it was a way that we could still connect. So Facebook was a good avenue, a good tool for me to kind of share what was going on. And then on Mother's Day, oh, hi, I do see that Judy just joined. On Mother's Day, when I was talking to Mom, that morning on the radio, Mother's Day, as we know, is a Sunday. Our Janesville, Wisconsin station plays all kinds of Sunday oldies, and there's always a song that triggers something in me. And on Mother's Day, Delta Dawn came on. And Delta Dawn is one of the songs that one of my first cousins, I think it was Timmy, as we would say, Timmy would do karaoke way, 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 way before karaoke was even a thing. And he would belt out Delta Dawn. And as I was thinking about Delta Dawn and Timmy and Mother's Day, it dawned on me that I had 3 sets of cousins. Dorothy, I see Dorothy Dickman's there. Hi, Dorothy. 3 sets of cousins of large families whose mother passed away when they were young. And I don't think until really on that Mother's Day did I realize that these children were, I knew their mother was gone. I know that. I was at the funerals, but I didn't think about how impacted that had on their life. And so that was a moment for me to stop and think about those kids and their lives in that way. So that was one of my entries one day. And I'm going to read about that in a minute. So my trends were grocery stores, masks, McDonald's, church, death, and then my Dyersville thing. So those were the kinds of things I noticed I was keeping up with, again, not intentionally, because I never intended for this to be a culminated project, and it turned out that it was. So I've got a timer set, so I don't, oh, it's 6:54, here we go. I'm gonna read just a couple things for you, and if you have your book with you, I can let you know what page I'm reading from. The first one I'm reading from is page 42, is one of my McDonald's cups, and the cup lid said, "Jump for joy." Now you probably know where this is going because I kind of gave you a trigger before, but it goes like this. "Jump for joy" was the quip on my pop lid today. Obviously, McDonald's does not know me very well. Jumping for joy without a good supportive undergarment is disastrous. And then my hashtags were girls, 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 meaning my female body parts. And my other hashtag was, "Where's my 18-hour bra?" So it was that day when Jump for Joy was like, oh yeah, honey, McDonald's, you don't want me to jump for joy. That would not be a pretty scene at all. Another one is on page 54. And this was about church. My middle son, for those of you who are new to our meeting this evening, my child, Matthew, is 27. He had a brain tumor when he was a baby, and he was treated here in Rockford with chemotherapy, and he has deficits. He has disability, but he does function fairly well. And this young man is all in on some things. And one of those things he's all in on is church. And here was my entry from April 5th. "Church at home is just not the same, even though my son embraces the whole experience. He kneels, he prays, and he sings. We all pray the Our Father out loud, but I think I missed the sermon." And my hashtag was nap. I couldn't do it. But Matthew, on the other hand, he stands up and he's praying and he's doing it the whole thing as if he's in there. So I was like, be like Matt, follow what Matt can do. So that there's things about church in there. And I'm kind of hoping that I can take a look with an avenue down with maybe not the Catholic Church, but just the religious groups in town and see if they'd be interested in doing this, because we went through Lent. We tried our own fish fry. I said, that didn't work, you know, leave it to the professionals, go to the church, fish fries. That's the way to handle that. So that was that. I won't read this part because I want to keep some time for you to ask questions. One of my weirdest masks that I saw, the funniest, was a sleep shade over their mouth and nose. I mean, that was like crazy. And then one guy one day, and you know what? Now it's a commercial product. He was in the store with his turtleneck up over his mouth like this shopping. Now we have those things. I don't even know what they're called, but there's something you can buy that's actually like a dickie, up and down, up and down. But that was way back in April when we were starting to wear those kinds of things. And here we are, they made them, they manufactured them. So masks have gone the whole gamut. Okay, here's Mother's Day. Day 50, I was halfway through these 100 days. And I mentioned the first song I heard was Delta Dawn. And my hashtags were, I'll read that part. The first song I heard on the Country Oldies this morning was Delta Dawn. I think that was the song that one of my cousins sang long before karaoke was cool. Then I thought about my cousins whose mother had died while they were so young. I have too many cousins to tag here, but it gave me a moment to pause and think about that. And then my hashtags are Ralph's kids, Betty's kids, and Pete's kids. And I just need to, again, mention that struck me, that on that day, on Mother's Day, I realized they lived without their mother for so long, and their dad, you know, parented in both ways. And, you know, kudos to everybody for pulling through that and doing so well. I know it's not easy. I know a couple of friends now who are both the mom and the dad because their wives have died with children, and it's tough. So, you know, shout out to you guys. Mm-hmm. And here's my one. This is on Mother's Day. When I was calling my mom, I said, I called my mom and really enjoyed hearing about her 2.5-hour online euchre game with her hometown gal pals. She said it was just like she was back there having a card game with them. And then my hashtag is besties. And I'm like, you know what? That is true about besties. You've got to find ways to connect with them. So that was important to me to acknowledge that Lila and Vera and my mom, in the age of technology, pulled it together and are getting to play their card game every week. So that was pretty awesome. Oh, my last one I want to share with you, another mask story. Before we had our commercial mask, I'm on page 266. So day 88, this was in June 17th. a guy came in the store with his t-shirt up over his nose, walking like this. And it dawned, what it reminded me of is when kids in grade school, when someone passes gas and the kids are like, oh, oh, oh. You know, I thought, here's a grown man walking through the grocery store with his shirt up, like, okay, who did that? Who did that? You know, and now we have those little collar things everybody's wearing. So my book is filled with those kinds of things. It's a quick read. It's short. Hopefully you enjoy it. You'll find relatable things. It's meant to be just kind of like a time capsule. Kind of now will serve as a little bit of history. My niece Madeline, Ann's daughter, said one time she thinks kids that are in high school in 10 and 15 years are going to need a whole semester devoted to the year of 2020 because we had so much going on. So that's kind of the book in itself. If you're interested and don't have a book, the Dyersville Library has one, and they're on sale out at Just For You by the subway station. I think it's Stone Creek Plaza. Ace Hardware is going to have a few more books. I'm going to bring some out on Saturday. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and of course, I'll be at the Brew and Brew on Saturday morning if you want to get some books or need any for gifts or anything like that. So,
yeah.
Sheri, do you have a favorite day or a couple favorite days in your book that you really liked?
You know, I don't, we not even talked about this. We thought about this, you and I, and you mentioned that a few different times. I'm going to go the somber route for just a minute. When my friend's daughter died suddenly from a brain aneurysm, it gave me the chance to repeat some things that I've learned from my friend Tom, who's done a lot with grief work due to the fact that his family, he's lost 3 different family members, 3 different ways in different years, on how to help people who are grieving. And I was able to put some of that out there, say their name, call them all the time, or not all the time, but keep calling them, you know, do things for them. If they say no, they don't want to do anything, don't take that as they're not going to be able to do something again. So that truly was one of my favorite that I could do, that I could kind of just share something that I had learned along the way, maybe pass along to somebody who had not had some of those tips. And I don't know what page it's on, but some of those tips are in there. And I don't know, I guess the hopscotch one is one of my fun days because that was like, yeah. So anybody else have questions?
No, Sheri, I will tell you though that I have given the book for a lot of coworkers, and one of my coworkers' mother was visiting from Michigan, and she read it because she was just visiting and there's a place to go. And she's a woman with strong faith, and she is intrigued by who you are, and she's intrigued by your story and wants to know more about your son because of the little clips you put in there about Matthew. So I'm like, okay, hang on, there's another book coming. So I think people who
that is supposed to be the book I wrote, not this one.
I know.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is I think people who may not know you, may not know the story, got some really good bits of you, of who you are, because you are a woman of faith, you are a family person, you have a story there with Matt that we got bits and pieces of that. I think you've intrigued people who don't know you enough to know that, hey, she's got a story here and we want to hear more.
Well, that's good to know. And you guys have been very encouraging about that. And, you know, I sent them away tonight for dinner because I didn't want them home while I was having this. I don't want Matt to always hear that I'm talking about him. And he reads. So when I write a story about him, there's a lot of variables about that I need to be very sensitive to, provide him a sense of dignity, but still tell the story. And you know what? We have a remarkable story. Yes, we do. Everybody I know has a remarkable story in some way. And sometimes I get hung up with, why is mine unique? But I will get that story written. There is a lot to write about. There's a lot to mention, you know, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess my point is, like, there was a lot of you that people could get to know you just by your clips and get to know who you are and a little bit about you, which was pretty cool.
Well, and that's
we all know
the editor said it's a lead in. It'll give people the opportunity to get in deeper, dig in.
Yep, for sure.
Has Matt read the book?
It's in his room. He reads about 2 books at a time, 2 or 3, and he's got bookmarks in them. And somebody asked him if it might have been you. He asked if he'd read a book, and he said he didn't have one. I said, oops. Mom had given all the grandkids a book for Christmas, and I guess I didn't put one in his hand. But yes, he is reading the book now. He hasn't mentioned much to me about it because he lived every 100 days with me. He probably knows what's in it.
We bought quite a few to give it to, you know, friends and neighbors and things like that. And everybody just loved it. They just thought,
Good.
you know, this is just what we need. I mean, it's just a nice, fun read.
It
You
is.
know, as you mentioned, you don't, it's not a story where you have to, there's a plot or anything like that. It's just to pick it up and put it down. But when you pick it up, you want to read more. When
Oh, good.
when the original Facebook was going on, day after day, before we knew there was going to be a book, we were anxiously looking forward to the next day to read what was going on.
Yeah, what was happening? I was going to say something about the, anyway, it's gone. Anyone else? Questions?
No, I agree with Russ. I read Lila's book, and the more I got into it, the more I kept reading until I could get through it. It's like, oh, I wonder what tomorrow's gonna bring.
Who's talking? Who's that?
It's Lois.
Lois. Oh, hi, Lois. Okay, good. Well, that's good. And like I said, it was never intentional, but people were saying, are you going to post tonight? I would get Facebook messages. I'm waiting. I can't go to bed. Debbie would say, I'm going to read the first thing in the morning if she doesn't post tonight, you know? So I kind of, like Ann said, Sheri, you can quit whatever you want, because I was like, oh my God, I got to write something, you know? But it didn't become an expectation by others. It really was one of my own at that point. So I wanted to just kind of keep it up. And I'm glad I quit at 100 days. It was just a perfect fodder for a book. It just kind of was able to go together at that point. So Lois, I didn't know you were reading along the way.
Have you always enjoyed writing?
I'm sorry?
Have you always enjoyed writing?
No. I shouldn't say yes and no. I was not good at it. My first, in fact, Sheri Casey sent me a note the other night and she congratulated me on the book. And she was an English teacher, as you probably all remember. And I said, oh, Sheri, you would not want to know what my first grade in college was on my paper. I got an F on mechanics and a C on content. So I've always kind of had that pulling me back, like, you can't write, you got a shitty paper. Whoops, sorry about that. But as far as writing goes, I've written quite a bit over the years about Matt to my family, and Mom was good enough to print, again, she printed things and put them in a notebook for me. So going back to 1998, I have a lot of material that I probably have forgotten. I guess I was going to say that about this book. When we got to the end of 100 days, there were some things in it that we had already forgotten, like sanitizing our groceries. I don't know if people out there were wiping Clorox wipes on over everything and whatnot, but have I enjoyed writing? It's a healing process as much as enjoyment. Because when I write it down with words, I process it better. I know where I'm at, you know, mentally and emotionally with things, because it's tough and everybody's got their own unique story. I know that, and day by day,
Hi.
there's some that are wearing.
Good.
So-
How are you?
Good. I'm
Good.
calling to see what happened. I was just thinking, what happened with your deal today?
Yeah.
Be put on mute.
So I talked to the
Okay.
seller. Well, I
Carol,
talked
are you
to
still there, Carol?
their
Reardon?
agent, and she's like, "Yeah, they can't come up
She had
any.
to
They're
leave, she
basically
thought.
stretched as it is."
I
as
want to
far
say a
as-
shout out to Carol about the cool display up on the Riker Shoe Building this winter. Whoever put those inflatables up there. I think I grabbed her picture off Facebook. I'm not a friend of Carol's yet. I want to just tell her thanks for posting that picture. It was so cool. So, anybody else? Dorothy, have you heard of the book before tonight?
You talking to me?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of this book before you signed on for the Zoom tonight?
Yes, I did. A friend of mine, Vera, told me about it. And I said,
Oh,
will you save it for me? I want to read that. And then when this
Good.
came up, I thought, well, boy, I'll get to that.
good.
I haven't read it yet, but I'm waiting.
Okay. Well, I think the library has a copy, so maybe you can get one from the library.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
read it.
Good.
Sherry,
We do have a
Sherry-
copy.
Yeah, Sherry,
What's
what I think is so cool is when it first came out, of course, we got ours before you did.
Yeah.
But my 21-year-old daughter and I were sitting there reading it, and you know, we were almost page for page, and what she would chuckle at would be something that I would chuckle at. And so she's 21, and like I said, I gave it to my colleague's mom, who's in her 70s, and here we have, you know, our moms and Lila in their 80s. So really runs a pretty wide gamut of
Gamut.
yeah, 21 to
Yeah, so I will go down as 21. I was thinking 24, but my age for my readers has gone to 94 because one lady bought it because she got it from somebody else and yada. Anyway, she said that her 94-year-old grandmother won't give her the book back. She's reading it. So it has a lot of variety in it for people, I think, of all ages.
yes,
So,
for sure.
yeah. So
Thank you.
anyway.
I started reading it the second time.
Oh, the second time?
I,
Oh,
want,
Vera, good for you.
I wanted it to last 100 days, but I read 52 pages the first night.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I read 52 pages the
Oh.
first night.
Oh, wow.
I wanted it to last 100 days, but it didn't.
Oh, gosh. Well, I think that's one of those things that is good about the book. It ended up being much thicker. I guess I didn't get to that point. It got to be a much thicker book. And when people see it, they kind of like big eyes, like, I don't want to read all that. But when I tell them it's a day by day and you can stop and start wherever you want. I mean, I don't have to.
It's hard to
You know.
stop. It's hard to stop reading.
Yeah.
I like the hashtags.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, that's
Good.
really cool. I think
Thank you. I
yeah.
think that kind of, what shall I say? Made the book unique. It was different in that. And that was another reason why the book got so long in number of pages. The format of the typesetter needed to put them together in a way that the line wouldn't wrap around and break, and then it wouldn't be a hashtag and it wouldn't read right. So there's a lot of white space, you know. Please don't worry about how thick it is. It's okay.
Good job.
Thank you,
Sheri,
Vera.
can you
Thank
tell
you
the
very
story
much.
about getting, Sheri, can you tell the story about getting your books?
Oh my goodness. So as an author, there's two ways to order books on Amazon. Amazon is my quickest access to books. There's two ways to do that, as an author and as a customer. So I thought, oh, I'm the author, I'm going to order these books. So I placed my order and I didn't get, they weren't coming and people were getting theirs. Anne got hers, what, within 2 days?
Yeah.
And I was
Amazon
well into
Prime.
a week, 2 weeks. I didn't even have mine yet. So before Anne, when Anne got hers or whoever was getting theirs first, I quickly went on Amazon.com with Prime and ordered some books, and they got here again, not as soon as again, it was Christmas season. I got mine 2 weeks after everybody else was getting theirs. So it was not cool. I was disappointed. But I have a good friend and she's a 24-year-old girl. She said her book came. She came over to my house with her Amazon package, not opened, and addressed to her, of course. And she said, here, go ahead. So it was one of those just very cool moments that she let me have that first touch of the book and flip the pages and just see that I did have a book in print, because the process was a long and laborious, but it was a process. And I thought, we'll ever see a book, especially when everybody was getting theirs and I was not. So yeah, mine didn't come for about 2 weeks. And so I've ordered a lot of books on Amazon.com versus the author route because they come so much faster. Yeah. Pretty discouraging, a little deflating at first. Yeah.
Believe it.
Well, Sheri, I have two things.
Okay.
So the first one is, you might be hearing from Ellen because, I messaged her show. So I just want to let you know that. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I gave a lot of books away for Christmas, and two of my friends had to call me to ask me what hashtags were.
Oh, did they? Are they older than us?
Yeah, well, they're my age, and I'm a lot older than you are. But yeah,
Oh,
they didn't
no,
know
you're
what
not a
hashtags
lot.
were.
Is that right? Yeah. Well, I had to tell Mom what a hashtag was, or I think we talked about that, what it was. But yeah,
Oh, that was cute.
yeah, that's good. Have they read the book then? They did go through it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I don't know my second
wonderful.
time through, but I gave it to my daughter-in-law, my daughter, my
Oh.
daughter-in-law, and then like 12 friends.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it was great. So
Well, I'm glad that they asked what the hashtags were rather than
yeah,
skimmed
that
over
was
them.
so funny. Yeah, they didn't get it because they didn't know what hashtags were. So
Oh, how funny. Yeah. Well, now I educated them also, right?
there you go.
Or you educated them. Yeah.
I just told Tom they were the punchline.
That's perfect.
There you go.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well, I think it's just like the perfect little gift. Like I have 3 or 4 just on hand in case I eventually, when we get to go places, a little hostess gift or a little birthday
Perfect.
gift or a Valentine's gift for somebody. It's just nice to have a few on hand. That's going to be like my go-to grab and go for a little birthday gift or something like that. So I ordered a few extra. Just
yeah,
to keep.
so if anybody in town that you know of wants a book, come Saturday morning. I don't want to sit alone and I don't drink coffee. I drink McDonald's Diet Coke, but I'll get brew and brew. I'll find juice or something. But stop in, at least say hi or whatever. I would love to see some people.